The Lonely Nights. Chapter 1. The Strange Visitor. I've never been one for believing in superstitions, but as I stepped out of my front door and into the biting winter chill on that fateful night, an icy shiver coursed down my spine. A lone street lamp cast long shadows across the quiet residential streets, making it seem like specters were watching me from every corner. My breath misted in the frigid air as I walked towards my mailbox, the only sound being the crunch of ice beneath my boots on the frost-covered sidewalk. Our neighborhood usually hushed during this time, but tonight felt different. The kindling wind carried an unsettling whisper through the streets, a quiet murmur that sent shivers down my spine. That was when I saw him, or at least what appeared to be a man huddled in his dark overcoat and fedora, standing mere feet away from my house, his face obscured by the shadows. My first instinct was panic, but something halted me mid-step as he turned. Our eyes met briefly before he vanished into thin air. I blinked, rubbing my eyes in disbelief. Was it a trick of the dim light? Shaking off the chill, I hurried back inside and locked all doors. But that night, he appeared again, in front of Mrs. Jenkins' house across the street, then at the end of our block under the flickering glow of Mr. Patel's porch light. The following day, a sense of unease hung heavy over the neighborhood like fog on a cold morning. People whispered at the local coffee shop, speaking in hushed tones when I walked by. I tried to brush it off as small dot-town gossip, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Mr. Patel spoke with me in a hushed tone about strange noises and an unsettling presence around his home after sunset. Mrs. Jenkins mentioned finding her trash scattered on the sidewalk for no reason. The figure appeared every night, always at a distance, as if watching us all. His face remained hidden behind that mask of shadows. As dusk fell, I retreated to my dimly lit living room, trying to lose myself in a book. Outside, an unnatural stillness enveloped our little community. The clock struck 10, and the house opposite mine went dark. Mr. Patel's usually always aglow with warm light. My fingers traced over the spine of my novel, but I couldn't concentrate on the words. Shadows seemed to move outside, creeping across the walls. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed from upstairs. In my room, a floorboard creaked. My heart pounded as I approached cautiously, each step muffled by the plush carpet. No one else should be here at such an hour. The door was ajar when I reached it. Inside, darkness clung to every corner like a wet sheet. I poked my head in, nothing but the usual cluttered space. Flicking on the light, something made me recoil. In the center of my desk lay a black fedora, crumpled and face down. He was here, right under my roof. My room's window was open, icy wind swirling the papers I had left out overnight. With trembling hands, I closed it. The chill that seeped inside made me shiver even harder than before. As I turned back to the door, I noticed something else, an outline of a man standing behind my desk, hunched over as if studying something. No way. Surely this was just fatigue playing tricks on me. I squinted, peering closer. He wasn't looking at any papers but seemed transfixed by something. Shaking myself out of it, I made for bed, curtains closed tight, the TV humming in the background to drown my racing thoughts. The wind howled as if taunting me with an unseen melody. It was then that I heard it, a low whispering, like leaves rustling, coming from outside my room. I recognized no words, but it sent shivers down my spine. Each night, they grew louder and more frequent, the words starting to form phrases. "Wake up," they murmured. "I'm watching you." My dreams were plagued with the image of that man, his eyes glowing like embers from a distance. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision when I opened my eyes in the morning, long fingers tracing the walls. The sun had yet to rise as I prepared for work, still disoriented from the previous night's events. Whispers intensified, now distinct. "Wake up! Wake up!" A scream escaped me, and I stumbled out of bed, scrambling for the light switch on my wall. It was just a rat in the attic. Yet when I glanced through the window, his face stared back, obscured by the darkness, watching. My world began to unravel, a disquieting feeling that someone had invaded my home while I slept. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. Each day felt like an eternity since those nights. Unnerving shadows followed me, and whispers turned into words as plain as the morning sun outside my window. "You're next, or leave now." They seeped through walls when I was alone in the house. The man's silhouette appeared near my back whenever I turned to glance behind me. If anyone noticed, they never spoke of it. It felt like a private hell. I stopped leaving for work until nightfall. One evening, with the sun setting over our silent street, shadows shifted and merged into a single form, watching from the garden path between my house and the neighbor's fence. A figure stepped out into the moonlight, tall and gaunt, dressed in black. He wasn't looking at me, but seemed to be listening intently, as if waiting for something. His presence had grown more intense since I stopped leaving home. Strange things began happening. Misplaced items, flickering lights, whispers at 3 a.m. that only stopped when he vanished into the darkness. My mind wandered, questioning sanity under his relentless gaze. Every night, there he was lingering in the shadows of our fence watching. Then he spoke aloud. "What do you hide?" His voice rasped like dry leaves rustling through trees. I'd answer, and it would stop, leaving me gasping for air until darkness reclaimed him. The man's presence made every creaking floorboard sound sinister. My heart raced as the house creaked with each sway of a tree branch outside. I dared not leave my room or open curtains, fearing those unblinking eyes on me from within their embrace. Shadows inched closer to the window during the day, too, long fingers tracing its glass. I should call 911, but would he be there? They say nothing is more terrifying than your own fears. One night, I heard him whispering directly behind me, a name Eve. It was then that I realized it wasn't just shadows playing tricks on my mind. The voice had become louder, clearer. My neighbor stood beside my bed, his eyes glinting in the moon's light seeping through the curtains, and he leaned closer. "Your time is near," rasped his hollow voice before disappearing into darkness. Chapter 3. The Final Confrontation. I cowered under my sheets until dawn broke, too exhausted to think straight. The day passed in a haze of dread, whispers fading into muttering shadows that seemed to follow me home from work. It wasn't until I stumbled back inside that I heard something else, shuffling footsteps on the floor above. My heart stuttered as the man emerged from my attic door, his face pale under the dim light spilling in behind him. The air turned thick with an eerie scent of damp earth and decay. His eyes were indeed glowing. "You shouldn't have seen," he rasped before lunging forward, fingers closing around my throat. He dragged me up into a cavernous space filled with artifacts and tomes, suffocating, unable to draw breath. Ancient texts fell from bookshelves when he spoke. They'd open on their own pages. In one flickering glance, I realized he wasn't human. A gust of wind swept past him as if the man himself had spoken my name. A page opened to the necromancer. Fables whispered of his powers beyond our world, and yet. The words were typed under Eve, the last entry, one who sleeps. Screams, distant at first, became louder. Rats scurried in panic from the walls as I was raised by an unseen force through a chasm. In that void, my legs found themselves walking backward into darkness where he stood before me, eyes alight like embers. Your time has come. The air was thick with damp earth and decay, and then there was only blackness. He told me to leave, and the words still whispered through the night. I am awake, but something else had. My world crumbled around me as a door to other dimensions opened that evening. Ancient texts falling around us like a storm of knowledge. In those final moments, I realized I was part of his world, a necromancer's Eve awakened by an unsettling book and his watchful gaze. Now, the words were carved into my skin, my true fate waiting to unfurl in pages unturned yet to come. What would you think if you found out that your home wasn't yours?